This week we shine a spotlight on countries in Africa which have been neighbours since independence but are now in conflict with each other. What is causing the enmity? And what steps should be taken to resolve disputes? Critical questions that beckon conclusive decisions or even answers. This is World of Africa with me, Erik Njoka. Welcome to the program. The show starts right now. Now, African national borders are afflicted by a multitude of troubles that straddle villages or even communities. Border disputes have been a reality on the continent through millennia. Africa certainly has its own peculiar set of problems. Today, close to 100 active border disputes exist across the continent. Rising nationalism, population, and environmental pressure mean that the situation is likely to get worse. There have been calls for an army of indigenous peace practitioners to work closely with available Pan-Africanist leaders and statesmen to douse and resolve tensions. But is that feasible? Some Africans have little hope. Here's World of Africa special report on Africa's feuding neighbours.
Despite efforts by various stakeholders to establish a peaceful Africa, armed conflicts continue in parts of the continent. Many of the current conflicts are driven by prospects of political power or financial gain, with armed groups fighting to acquire valuable mineral resources, assert their ideology, or address grievances. The recent flare-ups is in Central Africa. The animosity in this region is between nations that have been silent enemies, until the claws came out recently. The war in the DRC is one of Africa's deadliest. Among the several armed groups are the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda. Rwanda and Burundi, two small neighboring countries in East Central Africa, have eyed each other with mistrust since 2015. Along with the dissidents, tens of thousands of Burundians fled to neighboring countries to escape violence and unrest. Many went to Rwanda, but some are now returning home. Presidents of both countries now say they want good relations, and now Rwanda is edging towards a war with its large northern neighbor, the Congo, as Kivu remains the province under bombardment.
Le Rwanda a en réalité des velléités expansionnistes.
This context of aggression and occupation of territories in North Kivu is perpetrated by the so-called M23 terrorist group, which has proven support in men and logistics of Rwanda.
Let's have mercy on these people. Let's stop the war and start dialogue. We cannot start with dialogue and then stop the war. No. We have to stop the war first, then begin the dialogue.
In East Africa, there are tensions between a number of countries. Dispute between Kenya and Uganda over a round rock crammed with corrugated metal shacks which rises out of Lake Victoria and whose deep waters that surround it are rich with fish, the Migingo Island. Migingo Island covers less than half a football pitch. According to the Ugandan police, more than 500 people live in less than 2,000 square meters area. The rock island, with its poorly constructed huts, a tiny port, some bars, a brothel and an open-air casino, is heavily contested by Kenya and Uganda, as both claim ownership.
This is Kenya. They are telling us not to put the flag here and rather have it on the other island because they claim the island is theirs. What should we do?
The reason I came here was that a long time ago in 2006, there were lots of people and fish was in abundance. My friends who were based here used to come back home with a lot of goodies, and that's what drew me to come work here.
From From the east to the Horn of Africa, Ethiopia, Sudan and Egypt have recently agreed to resume negotiations to resolve their decade-long complex dispute over the Grand Renaissance Dam hydropower project in the Horn of Africa. The Grand Renaissance Dam is being constructed by Ethiopia on the River Nile. The Nile, Africa's longest river, has been at the center of a decades-long complex dispute involving several countries that are dependent on the river's waters. Despite previous talks, the point of contention hasn't changed. The Sahel region has seen its share of bickering neighbors. Armed conflicts in Burkina Faso, Cameroon, Chad, Mali, Niger and Nigeria all worsened in 2019. The security challenges are linked to the rise of violent extremism and the proliferation of armed non-state groups such as Boko Haram, which has spread from Nigeria across the lake to the Chad region. In North Africa, boundary disputes and contested territories are rife, including the Moroccan claims over Spanish territories of Ceuta and Melilla. There is the long-lasting Morocco and Mauritania struggle against the Polisario Front, while Libya and Algeria have intervened in favor of the Saharan National Liberation Movement. Algeria and Morocco accuse each other of harboring militants and condoning arms smuggling. Libya appears to claim about 32,000 square kilometers that apparently is under Algerian control. After a brutal civil war, South Sudan declared its independence from Sudan in 2011. However, tensions persisted over natural resources, specifically access to the oil fields in the newly independent south. The borders between Sudan and South Sudan were officially erected when South Sudan took independence in 2011. A year later, Sudan and South Sudan descended into war over the disputed oil-rich area Bantu or Hedjlich, which lies on their border. In 2017, Somaliland held its fifth peaceful election since it declared independence from Somalia in 1991. Despite meeting the international criteria for statehood, including having a demarcated territory, a population, and a legitimate government, Somaliland remains unrecognized. But there is a presence of extremist groups like the Al-Shabaab, whose terror has seeped through the borders into neighboring countries like Kenya. However, relations between Kenya and Somalia have deteriorated in recent years. In December 2020, Mogadishu cut off diplomatic ties and accused Nairobi of meddling in its internal affairs after Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta hosted the political leadership from Somaliland, a breakaway state that Somalia's central government does not recognize.
It should instead see the decision of the court as an opportunity to strengthen the relationship of the two countries and the collaboration of their neighboring people. Somalia did not choose to be a neighbor with Kenya, but it was the willing of the Almighty God, so that we are forced to live as peaceful neighbors. Somalia was committed to that forever and welcomes it now.
Southern Africa has its own set of disputes. The contestation between Namibia and South Africa over the Orange River has been described as one of the deadliest boundary disputes in the world. There are tensions between Swaziland and South Africa. At least 24 countries have sent soldiers to support Mozambique in its fight against insurgents in northern Cabo Delgado province. Mozambique's civil war rumbles on. The big struggles now are political, about money, the causes of war, who can fight, and if the gas project can resume.
Right now things are a little bit more controlled. I would say things are improving. Yeah, if we compare to the moments that the situation took place, the attack, to now, I would say things are better now. Because people can move, we can do everything, we can go to school, we can buy wherever we want. So things are okay now.
Commendably, the African Union has been committed to an audacious border program since 2007. This may go down as one of the most significant legal events on the continent. The declaration demands an Africa-wide exercise to demarcate international land and maritime boundaries. The complete delimitation and demarcation of Africa is a Herculean task. We are talking about an area of approximately 6.1 million square kilometers and 28,000 miles of international boundaries.
The militarization of the African continent, it's true. 5 coups in less than 2 years. It gives the impression that Africa is going back to the 70s, when military coups were legion. This is absolutely unacceptable. To say that it is external interference, I think that is taking things too far. There are intrinsic problems, there are problems of governance, there are perhaps difficulties, certainly, but we should not cast blame on others. I believe that we must assume responsibility and solve our problems ourselves.
The UNICEF has released a report warning that more than 2.5 million people in Nigeria are in need of humanitarian assistance, 60% of which are children, and are at increased risk of waterborne diseases and malnutrition due to the most severe flooding in the past decades. Rains are expected to continue for several weeks. Humanitarian needs are also expected to rise. Here now is a report from Lagos, Nigeria.
Nigeria recently experienced its worst ever floods in decades. Experts say that these devastating floods are the result of human activity that is exacerbating the climate change. According to a UN report, floods in Nigeria have affected over 3.2 million people, while over 1.4 million are still displaced. The UN report says that flooding that ravaged 34 states in the country can increase the risk of waterborne diseases. The international body has further said that 4.1 million people are at a risk of experiencing severe food insecurity, and 1.74 million children under 5 are projected to suffer from acute malnutrition in 2022.
This year flood is too much. So we used to enter our building, things are just sabotaged and everything spoiled. So our children, we can manage the water. Anyhow, the water penetrates, we can manage it till the flood go back.
The government officials say that the UN data could be underestimated and the scale of devastation could be even bigger. They admit that immediate actions is needed to stop future disasters associated with flooding, and African leaders must stand united in confronting the West on the effects of global warming.
For now, it was very, very bad. You know, in some areas of the states, it was worse than others. You know, in some areas, it covered the houses to the top. In some areas, it covered the houses to the window level. While some areas are closer to the road, it's just, what's in the compound and on the roadside. So basically, it was very bad. A lot of people were displaced.
Experts say that a number of factors are responsible for the devastation. The above-average rainfall due to global warming, overflowing dam in neighbouring Cameroon, and poor drainage infrastructure in the country resulted in the recent floods. According to the United Nations, seasonal rains and floods are severely impacting countries in the West and Central Africa.
Beyond the fact that we have global warming and other challenges, we believe that when the needful is done on the part of the federal government and even some of the state governments, especially in the area of clearing of channels, canals, a lot of those water, like I said, will be absorbed, and it will create the needed solution to a very large extent of the problem.
We're in the Khoi community of Lagos, Nigeria, where some Nigerians are still grappling with the losses that accompanied the flood. Where this year's flood has been described as the worst in decades, even as the international community have warned of more disasters that might accompany the flooding, like food insecurity, increase in the number of displaced persons, and diseases that accompany flood situations like this. They've called on both public and private partners to offer help to victims of the flood as it recedes. From Lagos, Nigeria, Louisa Olani, WION, World is One.
In South Africa, several pit bull owners shaken by a spate of horrific attacks are heeding calls to surrender their dogs. In just 1 week, in two separate incidents, a 3-year-old and an 8-year-old boy were mauled to death by the neighbours' pit bulls. Our reporter Carlden Ongmu filed this story.
In the last 2 months, over 100,000 people in South Africa have signed the petition to ban pit bull as domestic pets, and this number seems to be growing even faster in the past few weeks. But South Africans remain divided on the issue.
I am against the banning of pit bulls as domestic pets. I think the recent problems that have been occurring with attacks on small children are more down to irresponsible owners and not necessarily the dogs being at fault.
Very against pit bulls in the domestic session, especially since they are known to attack small creatures being children. In any community, as much as control as you have of your household.
The call to ban pit bull comes as countries like Russia, Finland, Denmark, United Kingdom and Portugal have either banned or put restrictions on ownership of the breed or its importation. But the Pit Bull Federation of South Africa is vehemently opposing the ban, as the federation believes that innocent lives are being lost due to irresponsible animal owners.
The Pit Bull Federation of South Africa is totally opposed to a breed ban. We are of the opinion that a breed ban in South Africa will not work. One just has to look at the increase in the maulings of people in Australia, in the UK, and in some states in America where these dogs are banned to prove that it doesn't really work. What is needed is stricter regulations in the owning of dogs, the enforcement of already existing laws and bylaws, and accountability on the part of owners, breeders, rescue centres, and everyone around us in society.
According to SPCA, more than 50 pit bull owners in South Africa have started handing over their dogs after several violent incidents in the past few weeks.
The SPCA can confirm that a number of pit bulls have been surrendered to SPCAs across the country, and I'm sure that other animal welfare organisations in South Africa are dealing with the same issue. In light of the recent issues surrounding pit bulls in South Africa, the NSPCA and the SPCAs have publicly stated that we would encourage people who have pit bulls who no longer want the animal, or any unwanted animal for that matter, to surrender the animal to the SPCA, as opposed to irresponsibly rehoming the animal or trying to get rid of the animal in a manner which is inhumane and cruel and often illegal.
As the debate on whether pit bulls should be banned as domestic pets continue, experts have advised that government should immediately take serious action on organisers of dog fights, improper illegal breeders and bad owners, because ultimately these actions result to aggressive behaviour of the dogs. This is Carlden Ongmu from Johannesburg, South Africa, for WION World is One.
Long seen as a secretive, ritualistic society with mysterious connections to the spirit world, performers of Southern Africa's Gule wa Mukulu, or the Great Barefoot Dance, are increasingly opening to the public. It's part of an engagement drive seeking to counter negative impressions and rehabilitate the group's reputation in society. Here's a report from Harare, Zimbabwe.
The mere sight of members of the group performing the Gule wa Mukulu ritual dance would send chills down the spine of many outsiders. But these days, hundreds of people, including young children, squeeze in for a closer look and also donate some money as the performers try to revamp their public image. Gule is mainly practiced in towns. However, the exact number of practitioners is unknown due to the numerous loosely knit groups countrywide.
The Gule is kept secretive, and as women, we don't know what goes on sometimes. We don't even know what goes on behind the scenes. But our responsibility is to sing and support them when they perform.
In 2008, UNESCO included Gule on its list of intangible cultural heritage of humanity and described it as a secret society of initiated men, involved in a ritual dance dating to the 17th century. Over the years, however, some unsettling reports have dented the impressions of Gule. In one instance, a young man died after being buried alive as a part of a resurrection miracle gone wrong. In another, a man was assaulted and left to die, allegedly for breaking internal rules. Also, in one more incident, a teenage boy was forced to eat raw chicken as a part of an initiation ritual. The society's reputation is further under threat in Zimbabwe due to the proliferation of copycat groups that commit crimes such as extortion, theft, sexual abuse, and assault.
These people are evil. They move around with weapons and are violent criminals. If they meet someone they don't like, they sometimes attack them.
However, the organizers hope that the more people are exposed to Gule, the more they can distinguish between the copycats and genuine members.
The appearance of Gule and sometimes the behavior of the Nyao dancers are the ones that make people assume and think that they may be violent or they've got other things attached to it. Some even attach Gule with witchcraft, which is not it. That's not it. But of course, people from Gule Nyao dance know a lot of medicine, just like the others.
Several festivals were organized countrywide as part of the campaign. Some in the performance wore animal masks. People in the audience threw money in appreciation. Still, long-held perceptions persist. Bureau Report, World of Africa.
And that's our time on World of Africa. Thank you very much for watching. Remember to engage with us on all our social media platforms and leave a comment or two. Until next week, my name is Erik Njoka. Goodbye.